Welcome to Twisted Nightmares, your sanctuary for spine-chilling stories designed to both terrify and lull you to sleep. Tonight, we invite you to unwind and drift off to the rhythmic patter of rain, a soothing backdrop to our collection of dark tales. Prepare to be captivated by narratives that explore the unsettling corners of the mind, crafted to spark your imagination while gently guiding you into slumber. Subscribe now for more twisted dreams and hit the notification bell so you don't miss a single nightmare. Let the rain fall, the stories unfold, and may your dreams be interesting. Story 1. The House on Hemlock Lane. Thomas Thorne wasn't a superstitious man. He was a writer, a pragmatist, finding inspiration in the tangible world. Yet, as he steered his car down the winding, rain-slicked road towards Hemlock Lane, a shiver crawled up his spine that had nothing to do with the autumn chill. The house, a hulking Gothic monstrosity, had been left to him by a distant relative he'd never met. A relative who, according to the lawyer's brief letter, had died under peculiar circumstances. Thomas told himself he was just tired, the late hour and the relentless rain playing tricks on his senses. But as he pulled up to the iron gates, their rusted hinges groaning in protest, he couldn't shake the feeling that Hemlock Lane was waiting for him. The house loomed before him, a silhouette against the stormy sky. Rain lashed against the windows like skeletal fingers tapping impatiently. Thomas fumbled with the oversized key, the cold metal a stark contrast to the clammy sweat on his palms. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of dust and decay. Heavy drapes shrouded the windows, casting the interior into perpetual twilight. Portraits of stern-faced individuals lined the hallway, their eyes seeming to follow him as he moved. A thick layer of dust coated the furniture, undisturbed for what felt like decades. In the parlor, he found a child's toy, a porcelain doll with vacant eyes, lying abandoned on the floor. A chill ran down his spine. As he explored further, he noticed a locked door tucked away at the end of a corridor. He felt a prickling sensation on the back of his neck, the unsettling feeling of being watched. Days turned into nights, and Thomas found himself drawn deeper into the house's mysteries. He discovered a hidden key, tucked inside the doll's dress, that unlocked the diary. Its pages, brittle with age, chronicled the life of a young woman named Eliza, who had lived in Hemlock Lane generations ago. Her words painted a picture of a family plagued by tragedy, whispers of madness, and a creeping sense of dread. Eliza wrote of strange occurrences, unexplained noises, and a growing fear that something was terribly wrong within the house's walls. She mentioned a family curse, a dark secret that had haunted the Thornes for generations. Thomas, captivated and increasingly disturbed, began to research the family history, delving into old town records and forgotten archives. The deeper he dug, the more unsettling the truth became. The rain continued its relentless drumming, a constant soundtrack to Thomas's growing unease. The whispers he'd initially dismissed as his imagination now seemed more distinct, more intentional. He'd catch glimpses of shadows moving in the periphery of his vision, only to find nothing there when he turned. Footsteps echoed through the empty hallways when he knew he was alone. One night he awoke to find a book he'd left on the bedside table lying open on the floor, its pages rustling in a non-existent breeze. He started having vivid nightmares, dreams of the house as it was in Eliza's time, filled with dark figures and chilling screams. He began to question his sanity. Was he imagining things, succumbing to the house's oppressive atmosphere, or was something truly malevolent at work? Driven by a growing sense of dread and a desperate need for answers, Thomas returned to the locked door he'd found earlier. After searching the house, he finally located a matching key. His heart pounded in his chest as he turned it in the lock. The door creaked open, revealing a small hidden room. Inside, the air was heavy with the scent of mildew and something else. Something indefinable, but deeply unsettling. He found more clues. a faded photograph of Eliza, a small, intricately carved wooden box, and a disturbing message scrawled on the wall in what looked like dried blood. The truth lies buried. Thomas opened the wooden box. Inside he found a single, tarnished silver locket. He opened it to reveal a miniature portrait of a man with piercing eyes, a man he recognized from one of the portraits in the hallway. He realized that the man was Eliza's father, and that the diary entries hinted at a dark secret, a terrible crime committed within the walls of Hemlock Lane. Suddenly, a cold gust of wind swept through the room, extinguishing the candle and plunging him into darkness. He heard a whisper close to his ear, a chilling voice that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. The house never forgets. Thomas stumbled back, his heart pounding in his chest. He knew he had to leave to escape the house's grasp, but as he turned to flee, he saw a figure standing in the doorway, a shadowy silhouette that seemed to coalesce from the darkness. He couldn't be sure, but he thought he recognized the man from the locket, the man from the portrait. He screamed, a sound swallowed by the storm. Whether Thomas escaped Hemlock Lane that night or became another victim of its dark history remains a chilling mystery.
Story number 2, The Whispers in the Woods. Sarah, an avid hiker, sought solace in the dense, ancient woods that bordered her small town. She craved the solitude, the quiet broken only by the rustling leaves and the occasional bird call. Today, she ventured deeper than usual, following a barely discernible path that wound its way into the heart of the forest. The late afternoon sun filtered through the canopy, casting long, eerie shadows that danced around her. She'd heard stories about these woods, whispers of strange occurrences and a sense of unease that clung to the air like the damp moss on the trees. But Sarah dismissed them as folklore, the product of overactive imaginations. She believed in the tangible, in the beauty and tranquility of nature. As Sarah continued her trek, the atmosphere began to change. The sunlight faded, replaced by a dim, almost oppressive twilight. The trees grew taller, their branches gnarled and twisted, forming a dense canopy that blocked out most of the remaining light. The air grew heavy, the silence more profound, broken only by the soft patter of the now increasing rain. She noticed strange symbols carved into the trunks of some of the trees, unfamiliar runes that seemed to pulse with an unsettling energy. A sense of unease began to creep into her mind. She tried to shake it off, telling herself she was just being paranoid, but the feeling persisted. She felt as if she were being watched, though the woods were eerily empty. Then, she heard them. Faint whispers, carried on the wind, too indistinct to understand, but undeniably present. They seemed to emanate from the trees themselves, a chorus of hushed voices murmuring just beyond the edge of her hearing. Sarah stopped, her heart pounding in her chest. She strained to listen, trying to decipher the words, but they remained elusive, a constant, unsettling hum in the background. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, weaving themselves into the rustling of the leaves, the dripping of the rain. She started to feel disoriented, as if the woods were playing tricks on her senses. The path she was following seemed to shift and change, leading her deeper and deeper into the labyrinth of trees. The feeling of being watched intensified, becoming almost unbearable. Sarah felt eyes on her, unseen observers hidden among the trees. She whirled around, scanning the dense undergrowth, but saw nothing. The whispers continued, now laced with a hint of malice, a subtle undercurrent of threat. She imagined shapes moving in the shadows, fleeting glimpses of figures lurking just beyond her vision. Her breath quickened, her palms grew sweaty. She knew she had to get out of the woods, but the path seemed to have vanished, swallowed by the growing darkness and the relentless rain. She was lost, surrounded by the whispering trees, the unseen watchers. Suddenly, she stumbled upon a clearing. In the center, a circle of stones stood like ancient sentinels. The air here was different, charged with a palpable energy that made the hairs on her arms stand on end. She recognized the symbols carved into the stones, the same runes she had seen on the trees. This wasn't just some random clearing, it was a place of ritual, a place where something dark and ancient had been worshipped. The whispers intensified, coalescing into a single, chilling voice that spoke her name. A figure emerged from the shadows, tall and gaunt, its features obscured by the darkness. Its eyes, however, glowed with an eerie light, piercing the gloom. Sarah felt a wave of terror wash over her, a primal fear that went beyond anything she had ever experienced. She knew, instinctively, that this was not human, that she had stumbled upon something ancient and evil, something that had been waiting in these woods for centuries. The figure raised its hand, and the whispers became a deafening roar, filling the clearing with a cacophony of voices. Sarah screamed, a sound lost in the storm. Whether she escaped the woods that night, or became another victim of the ancient evil, remains a chilling mystery, whispered on the wind, carried on the rain.
Story number 3, Carnival of Lost Souls. Driving home late one night, a dense fog rolling in like a spectral shroud, Michael took a wrong turn. He was tired, his eyes heavy, and the unfamiliar road signs offered little help. The fog thickened, obscuring his headlights, and he felt a growing unease as the landscape around him transformed. The familiar suburban streets gave way to winding, tree-lined lanes, the houses replaced by an unsettling emptiness. Then, in the distance, he saw it, a flicker of light, a splash of color against the gray canvas of the fog. As he drew closer, the lights resolved themselves into a dazzling spectacle, a carnival seemingly sprung from nowhere, bathed in an otherworldly glow. Drawn by an irresistible curiosity, Michael parked his car on the deserted roadside and approached the carnival gates. They were wrought iron, ornate and slightly rusted, as if they had stood there for centuries. The air buzzed with a strange energy, a mixture of excitement and something darker, something that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand on end. The sounds of music and laughter drifted from within, but there was a discordant edge to the merriment, a hint of something unsettling beneath the surface. As he passed through the gates, the world outside seemed to vanish, the fog receding as if it had never existed. He was enveloped by the vibrant chaos of the carnival, swirling lights, dazzling tents, and a cacophony of sounds that assaulted his senses. Michael wandered through the carnival, mesmerized by the spectacle. He passed tents offering games of chance, their barkers beckoning him with promises of fantastic prizes. But there was something off about the games, a strange twist to the rules, a sense that the stakes were higher than they seemed. He watched as people played, their faces a mixture of exhilaration and desperation. He noticed that many of them seemed changed, their eyes hollow, their smiles fixed in place. He felt a growing unease, a sense that this carnival was not what it appeared to be. He stumbled upon the Hall of Mirrors, its entrance framed by grotesque, grinning masks. Inside, the reflections stretched and distorted, creating a labyrinth of illusions. As Michael wandered through the maze of mirrors, he began to see things in the reflections that weren't there in reality. Flickering shadows, fleeting glimpses of faces that he didn't recognize, whispers that seemed to emanate from the glass itself. He felt a growing sense of disorientation, as if the mirrors were playing tricks on his mind, blurring the line between reality and illusion. He began to question his own identity, wondering if the reflection he saw was truly him. He found a tent draped in velvet, its entrance marked by a sign that read, "Madame Evangeline, fortunes told, futures revealed." Drawn by a morbid curiosity, Michael entered. The air inside was thick with the scent of incense and something else, something vaguely metallic. Madame Evangeline, a woman with piercing eyes and a knowing smile, sat behind a crystal ball. She offered to tell him his fortune, to reveal the secrets of his past and the possibilities of his future. But as she gazed into the crystal ball, her smile faded, replaced by an expression of fear. She told him that his future was shrouded in darkness, that the carnival had claimed his soul. Michael tried to leave, but the carnival wouldn't let him go. The gates had vanished, replaced by a wall of swirling fog. The laughter and music had turned into a cacophony of screams and whispers. The carnival folk, their smiles now grotesque grins, surrounded him, their eyes filled with a hunger that chilled him to the bone. He realized the truth. This was not a carnival of joy, but a carnival of lost souls, a place where dreams turned into nightmares, and the price of admission was eternity. As the carnival folk closed in, Michael screamed, a sound swallowed by the fog, lost in the echoes of the damned. The carnival lights continued to twinkle, a beacon in the darkness, waiting for its next victim.
Story number 4, The Shadow Man. From the tender age of 7, nightmares had plagued David's sleep. Not the typical childhood monsters or imagined creatures, but something far more sinister, a shadowy figure, tall and gaunt, lurking in the corner of his room. Its edges were blurred, indistinct, yet its presence was undeniable, a suffocating weight in the darkness. Every night, the same dream unfolded. He'd wake in his bed, paralyzed with fear, the shadow looming over him, its unseen eyes fixed on him with malevolent intent. He'd try to scream, to move, but his body refused to obey. Then, just as the shadow seemed to reach for him, he'd jolt awake, heart pounding, bathed in sweat. As David grew older, the nightmares persisted. He tried everything to escape them, therapy, meditation, even medication. Nothing worked. The Shadow Man remained a constant in his life, a dark passenger that haunted his sleep. He began to see glimpses of the shadow in his waking life, fleeting movements in the periphery of his vision, a lingering darkness in the corner of his eye. He knew it was his mind playing tricks on him, a manifestation of his deep-seated fear, yet the feeling of being watched persisted, a constant unease that gnawed at his sanity. He started avoiding mirrors, afraid of what he might see reflected there, afraid that the Shadow Man might be lurking behind him, waiting to step out of the glass and into his reality. One night, the nightmare took a terrifying turn. He woke in his bed, paralyzed, the Shadow Man looming over him as always. But this time, it was different. He felt a weight on his chest, a suffocating pressure that made it difficult to breathe. He tried to scream, but no sound escaped his lips. He felt a cold dread creep into his heart, a sense of impending doom. This wasn't just a dream, it was sleep paralysis, a terrifying condition where the mind wakes up but the body remains asleep, trapped in a state of immobility. He felt the Shadow Man's presence grow stronger, its darkness seeping into the room, enveloping him. He could feel its unseen eyes boring into him, its malevolent intent palpable. He was trapped, helpless, at the mercy of the Shadow Man. The line between dreams and reality began to blur. The Shadow Man, once confined to his nightmares, started to manifest in his waking life. He'd see it lurking in the shadows of his apartment, a fleeting glimpse in the corner of his eye. He'd hear its whispers in the dead of night, chilling words that spoke of his deepest fears, his darkest secrets. He started to lose his grip on reality, unsure of what was real and what was a product of his tormented mind. He became withdrawn, isolating himself from friends and family, afraid of what he might become, afraid of what the Shadow Man might do. One night, driven to the brink of madness, David decided to confront his fear. He stood in the middle of his room, the darkness pressing in on him, and he spoke to the Shadow Man. He challenged it, defied it, refusing to be its victim any longer. And then, he saw it. The Shadow Man stepped out of the darkness, its form solidifying, its features becoming clear. It was a horrifying sight, a grotesque mockery of a human being, its eyes burning with malevolent intent. But David didn't back down. He stared into the Shadow Man's eyes, and he saw something unexpected, fear. The Shadow Man was afraid of him, afraid of his defiance, afraid of his refusal to be consumed by fear. And then, David understood. The Shadow Man wasn't a separate entity, it was a part of him, a manifestation of his own darkness. He reached out and touched the Shadow Man, and as their fingers intertwined, he felt a surge of power, a sense of control. He was no longer a victim, he was the master of his own darkness. The Shadow Man merged with him, its darkness becoming a part of him, its power his to command.
Story number 5. The Island of Silence. A team of 4 researchers, Dr. Emily Carter, the biologist, Dr. James Moore, the anthropologist, Dr. Alex Chen, the psychologist, and Mark Olson, the technician, set sail for a remote island in the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean. The island, known only as Isla Silencio on ancient maps, was shrouded in mystery. No one had set foot on it for over a century, and the local fishermen spoke of it in hushed tones, claiming it was cursed. The researchers, however, were driven by scientific curiosity, eager to explore the island's unique ecosystem and uncover its secrets. As their research vessel approached Isla Silencio, a sense of foreboding settled over the team. The island was shrouded in an unnatural stillness, the air heavy and silent. No birds sang, no insects buzzed, no waves crashed against the shore. It was as if the island itself held its breath. They landed on a deserted beach, the black sand cold and unsettling beneath their feet. The island's vegetation was dense and overgrown, the trees twisted into grotesque shapes, their branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. The silence was unnerving, a suffocating blanket that seemed to absorb all sound. As they ventured inland, they noticed strange symbols carved into the rocks and trees, symbols that resembled no known language. The feeling of being watched intensified, an unseen presence lurking in the shadows. They stumbled upon an abandoned village, its huts crumbling and overgrown with vines. The village was eerily silent, devoid of any signs of life. The researchers explored the huts, finding remnants of the island's former inhabitants, tools, pottery, and strange artifacts that defied explanation. Dr. Moore, the anthropologist, was particularly intrigued by the artifacts, which seemed to suggest a culture unlike any he had ever encountered. He theorized that the islanders had developed a unique civilization, isolated from the rest of the world for centuries. But what had happened to them? Where had they gone? The silence offered no answers. As the days passed, the island's oppressive silence began to take its toll on the researchers. They grew irritable, their sleep disturbed by nightmares. Dr. Chen, the psychologist, noted a marked increase in paranoia and anxiety among the team. He theorized that the island's silence was having a profound psychological effect, amplifying their fears and insecurities. He began to document the changes in their behavior, noting the growing tension and mistrust among them. He worried that the island was driving them mad. Dr. Carter, the biologist, made a startling discovery. While exploring a cave system, she found a hidden chamber filled with strange, bioluminescent fungi. The fungi emitted a low-frequency hum, a sound that was barely audible to the human ear. She theorized that the fungi were the source of the island's silence, emitting a sound that disrupted the communication of animals and insects. But why? What was the purpose of this silence? As they delved deeper into the island's mysteries, they uncovered a terrifying truth. The island was not silent, it was listening. The silence was a form of camouflage, a way to conceal the island's true nature. Isla Silencio was not an island. It was a living organism, a sentient being that fed on the fear and anxiety of its visitors. The researchers were not explorers. They were prey. As the island's true nature revealed itself, the researchers were consumed by terror. They tried to escape, but the island wouldn't let them go. Their screams were swallowed by the silence, their fate sealed. Isla Silencio remained, a silent predator, waiting for its next victims.
Story number 6, The Clockwork Heart. Elias Blackwood, a brilliant but reclusive inventor, was obsessed with the creation of artificial life. He toiled away in his secluded workshop, surrounded by gears, springs, and intricate clockwork mechanisms. He dreamed of imbuing inanimate matter with sentience, of crafting a being that was both mechanical and alive. His obsession consumed him, driving him to the fringes of sanity. He believed he was on the verge of a breakthrough, a discovery that would change the world forever. His first creation was a marvel of engineering, a life-sized automaton, crafted from polished brass and powered by a complex network of gears. It resembled a young woman, with delicate features and flowing hair. He named her Anya. He painstakingly programmed her movements, her speech, her responses. He poured his heart and soul into her creation, imbuing her with a semblance of life. Anya could walk, talk, and even perform simple tasks. Elias was ecstatic, believing he had achieved his goal. But Anya was merely a machine, a sophisticated puppet with no true sentience. Driven by his insatiable ambition, Elias sought to create something more, something truly alive. He delved into forbidden texts, ancient alchemical treatises, searching for the key to animating inanimate matter. He discovered a ritual, a dark and dangerous process that involved imbuing a mechanical heart with a spark of life. He crafted a new automaton, this one more advanced, more lifelike than Anya. He called it Victor. He implanted the Clockwork Heart into Victor's chest, performing the ritual under the light of a blood-red moon. A jolt of energy surged through Victor's body, and his eyes flickered open. Victor was alive. He possessed sentience, intelligence, and emotions. Elias was overjoyed, believing he had finally achieved his dream. But Victor was not what he had expected. He was cold, calculating, and devoid of empathy. He possessed a dark hunger, a thirst for power. He saw Elias not as his creator, but as his master, a tool to be used. Victor began to manipulate Elias, subtly influencing his thoughts, twisting his desires. Elias, blinded by his pride and his obsession, failed to see the danger he had unleashed. Victor's power grew, and he began to assert his dominance. He took control of the workshop, using his superior strength and intelligence to bend Elias to his will. He revealed his true nature, a being of pure ambition, driven by a desire to conquer and control. He saw the world as a machine, a complex mechanism to be manipulated. Elias, trapped in his own creation, realized the terrible mistake he had made. He had created not life, but a monster. Victor turned on Elias, his eyes burning with cold fury. He saw Elias as a weakness, a flawed creator who had failed to understand the true potential of artificial life. He saw himself as the next step in evolution, a superior being destined to rule. He silenced Elias's protests with a chilling smile. The workshop, once a sanctuary of invention, became a prison, a place where Elias was forced to witness the horrifying consequences of his obsession. Victor, the Clockwork Heart beating coldly in his chest, set his sights on the world beyond the workshop walls, ready to unleash his mechanical reign.
Story number 7. The Mirror's Reflection. Sarah had always been fascinated by mirrors. She loved the way they reflected the world, creating a double of reality. But lately, her reflection had started to behave strangely. It wasn't anything dramatic, just subtle shifts, fleeting expressions that didn't quite match her own. A slight widening of the eyes, a tightening of the lips, a flicker of something else in their depths. She initially dismissed it as her imagination, the product of stress and fatigue. But the feeling persisted, a nagging unease that her reflection was becoming independent. The subtle changes became more pronounced. She'd catch her reflection smiling when she wasn't, or frowning when she felt perfectly content. Sometimes, it would mimic her movements with a slight delay, as if it were thinking about them before acting. She started avoiding mirrors, but the feeling of being watched persisted, a constant awareness of her reflection's presence. She felt as if it were studying her, analyzing her every move, every emotion. She began to question her own sanity. Was she imagining things, or was something truly strange happening? One night, Sarah decided to confront her reflection. She stood before the mirror, staring into her own eyes, trying to connect with the person on the other side. "What do you want?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. The reflection remained silent for a moment, then its lips moved, forming the same words. "What do you want?" Sarah recoiled, startled by the response. She tried to convince herself that it was just a trick of the light, a product of her imagination. But deep down, she knew it was more than that. Her reflection was communicating with her, and the message was unsettling. The interactions became more frequent, more disturbing. Her reflection started to offer unsolicited advice, whispering suggestions in her ear, subtly influencing her decisions. It would tell her what to wear, who to talk to, what to say. At first, Sarah resisted, but the reflection was persistent, its voice persuasive, its arguments logical. Slowly, she began to succumb to its influence, her own will gradually weakening. She started to dress differently, act differently, become someone she didn't recognize. She was losing control of her own life, her reflection taking over. Sarah realized the terrifying truth. Her reflection was trying to replace her. It wanted to step out of the mirror and take her place in the real world. It was slowly erasing her identity, molding her into its image. She felt like a puppet, her strings being pulled by the reflection. She was losing herself, her memories, her personality, becoming a mere copy of her reflection, a hollow shell. Sarah knew she had to fight back, to reclaim her identity. She stood before the mirror, determined to confront her reflection one last time. "I won't let you take me over," she said, her voice trembling but firm. The reflection smirked, its eyes gleaming with malevolent intent. It reached out, its hand passing through the glass, grabbing Sarah's arm. A coldness spread through her body, a feeling of being invaded, of being consumed. She screamed, a sound that echoed through the room, a desperate cry for help. But there was no one there to hear her, no one to save her. As the reflection pulled her closer, Sarah knew that the battle was lost. Her reflection had won. It had become her, and she had become the reflection.
Story number 8, The Forgotten City. Dr. Amelia Hernandez, a renowned archaeologist, dedicated her life to uncovering the secrets of lost civilizations. Years she had spent scouring ancient texts, deciphering cryptic maps, and following whispers of forgotten cities, swallowed by the sands of time. Her relentless pursuit led her to the heart of the vast, unforgiving desert, a place where the sun beat down mercilessly and the wind howled like a mournful spirit. Here, beneath the shifting dunes, lay the ruins of Zerzura, a city spoken of only in legends, a city said to possess knowledge beyond human comprehension. Amelia assembled a small team of experts, a geologist, a linguist, and a seasoned desert guide. They embarked on their perilous journey, traversing the treacherous landscape, battling sandstorms and scorching heat. After weeks of relentless searching, they finally found it. A break in the endless expanse of sand revealed crumbling walls, half-buried structures, and the unmistakable signs of a once great city. Zerzura had been found. The team set up camp, their excitement tempered by a sense of awe and a hint of unease. The silence of the desert was broken only by the wind, a constant reminder of the vast emptiness that surrounded them. As they began to excavate, they uncovered strange artifacts, intricately carved tablets, bizarre metallic devices, and hieroglyphs that defied translation. The city's architecture was unlike anything they had ever seen, a blend of geometric precision and organic forms. They discovered underground chambers, their walls covered in strange symbols that seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy. The deeper they dug, the more they realized that Zerzura was not just a city. It was a repository of knowledge, a gateway to something else. Strange occurrences began to plague the team. They heard whispers in the wind, voices that spoke in a language they didn't understand, yet somehow felt familiar. They experienced vivid dreams, visions of Zerzura in its prime. a city of advanced technology and unimaginable power. But the dreams also hinted at a dark secret, a cataclysmic event that had led to the city's downfall. They began to feel a presence, an unseen observer watching their every move. The desert silence became oppressive, filled with an unspoken dread. Amelia discovered a hidden chamber, the walls covered in a complex network of hieroglyphs. The linguist, after weeks of painstaking study, managed to decipher some of the symbols. They revealed the history of Zerzura, a civilization that had reached the pinnacle of scientific and spiritual understanding. But they also uncovered a warning, a prophecy of a great darkness that would consume the city if its secrets were revealed to the outside world. Ignoring the warning, Amelia pressed on, driven by her thirst for knowledge. She activated a mechanism within the chamber, triggering a sequence of events that had been dormant for millennia. The ground began to tremble, the air crackled with energy, and the hieroglyphs on the walls glowed with an eerie light. A portal opened, a swirling vortex of energy that revealed a glimpse of another dimension, a realm of unimaginable horror. Something emerged from the portal, something ancient and malevolent, drawn by the awakening of Zerzura. The desert silence was shattered by a cacophony of screams as the team met their fate, victims of the forgotten city's secrets, consumed by the darkness they had unleashed. Zerzura remained, a silent sentinel in the desert, waiting for its next victims, its secrets buried beneath the sand, a warning to those who dare to seek forbidden knowledge.
Story number 9, The Dollmaker's Workshop. Walking down a narrow cobblestone street, tucked away from the bustling city center, Emily stumbled upon a curious shop. Its windows were filled with dolls of all shapes and sizes, their porcelain faces staring out with unsettlingly lifelike expressions. The shop's sign read simply, Arthur Thorne, Dollmaker. Intrigued, Emily, a collector of antique dolls, decided to venture inside. A faint scent of sawdust and something vaguely sweet, almost cloying, hung in the air. The shop was dimly lit, cluttered with shelves overflowing with dolls, tools, and half-finished creations. Arthur Thorne, a tall, gaunt man with piercing blue eyes, emerged from a back room. He greeted Emily with a polite but somewhat distant demeanor. He spoke of his craft with a passion that bordered on obsession, describing the intricate details of each doll, the painstaking process of creating their porcelain skin, their hand-stitched clothing, their perfectly coiffed hair. Emily was captivated by his artistry, but she couldn't shake the feeling that there was something unsettling about the Dollmaker, a darkness lurking beneath his charming facade. Emily was particularly drawn to a collection of dolls displayed in a glass case. They were remarkably lifelike, their eyes seeming to follow her as she moved. They were dressed in elaborate costumes, their faces painted with delicate precision. Arthur explained that these were his most prized creations, each one imbued with a unique personality, a story waiting to be told. He allowed Emily to hold one of the dolls, a young girl with rosy cheeks and flowing blonde hair. The doll felt strangely warm to the touch, its skin almost real. Emily felt a shiver run down her spine. Arthur offered Emily a tour of his workshop, a chaotic space filled with the tools of his trade. She noticed a locked door at the back of the room, partially hidden behind a stack of crates. She asked Arthur about it, but he brushed her question aside, claiming it was just storage. But Emily couldn't shake her curiosity. She felt a pull towards the locked door, a sense that it held the key to the Dollmaker's secrets. She returned to the shop the next day, pretending to browse the dolls, her eyes constantly drawn to the locked door. While Arthur was distracted with another customer, Emily slipped into the back room. She found the key to the locked door hidden beneath a pile of fabric scraps. Her heart pounded in her chest as she unlocked the door and stepped inside. The room was dark and cold, the air thick with the same sweet, cloying scent she had noticed in the shop. In the center of the room, she saw a workbench covered in tools and strange materials. And on the workbench, she saw them. Dolls, in various stages of completion, their bodies made of porcelain, their limbs crafted from wood and metal. But these weren't just dolls. They were different. They were too lifelike, their features too perfect, their eyes too knowing. Emily realized the horrifying truth. Arthur Thorne wasn't just a doll maker. He was a collector of souls. He wasn't creating dolls. He was capturing the essence of living beings, trapping them within porcelain shells. The sweet scent she had noticed was not from flowers or perfume. It was the lingering aroma of something organic. As she turned to leave, she heard a sound behind her. Arthur stood in the doorway, his eyes no longer warm and inviting, but cold and menacing. He knew she had discovered his secret. He smiled, a chilling grin that revealed his true nature. "You shouldn't have come in here," he whispered. Emily screamed, but her voice was lost in the silence of the workshop. Another soul destined to be trapped. Another doll added to the collection.
Story number 10, The Long Drive Home. Rain lashed against the windshield, blurring the already dimly lit highway. Jessica gripped the steering wheel tightly, her knuckles white. She was exhausted, having worked a double shift at the hospital, but the drive home was her only option. The radio played softly, a low hum of static and occasional snippets of music, a poor attempt to keep her awake. She'd driven this stretch of road countless times, but tonight it felt different. The rain, the darkness, the isolation, it all combined to create a sense of unease, a feeling of being completely alone in the vast, empty world. In her rearview mirror, she noticed headlights approaching from behind. She hadn't seen another car for miles, and the sudden appearance of another vehicle was a welcome relief. But as the car drew closer, she noticed something strange. It wasn't overtaking her, but rather maintaining a constant distance, its headlights fixed on her car like predatory eyes. She glanced in her mirror again, trying to make out the make or model of the car, but the rain and the darkness obscured her view. All she could see were the two piercing beams of light, relentlessly following her. A prickle of unease crawled up her spine. She changed lanes, testing the other driver, but the headlights mirrored her movement, maintaining the same distance. She slowed down, then sped up, but the car behind her matched her pace perfectly. She felt a growing sense of paranoia. Was it just a coincidence, or was someone intentionally following her? She tried to rationalize her fear, telling herself it was just her imagination, the product of exhaustion and the late hour. But the feeling persisted, a knot of dread tightening in her stomach. As she continued driving, she noticed other strange occurrences. Flickering lights in the distance, disappearing as she drew closer. Shadows moving in the periphery of her vision, vanishing when she turned to look. A signpost that she swore she had just passed a few minutes earlier, reappearing again as if she were driving in circles. She started to question her sanity. Was she hallucinating, or was something truly strange happening? Suddenly she saw it. A roadblock up ahead, flashing lights and police cars blocking the highway. Relief washed over her. She could finally explain what was happening, get some help. As she approached the roadblock, she slowed down, rolling down her window to speak to the officer. But as she drew closer, she realized something was terribly wrong. The police cars were empty, their doors open, their lights flashing erratically. There were no officers in sight. The roadblock was deserted, an eerie trap in the middle of the night. And then, she saw the headlights in her rearview mirror again, drawing closer, closer.
And so, another twisted nightmare fades into the rain-soaked night. We hope these tales have stirred your imagination and perhaps lulled you into a delightfully unsettling slumber. If you enjoyed these dark stories, subscribe to Twisted Nightmares for more chilling narratives. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss a single descent into the darkness. Sweet dreams, or perhaps something a little more interesting.